not met, but there's a wonderful opportunity for us to share and discuss your career. And it seems that people sometimes think that, I just became famous and it all just kind of happened all at once, but you grew up in Indiana during the Depression. Would you tell us about your beginnings? Talk about the influence your mom had on you to become a performer and what that was like for you in your hometown.
Well, I'll start by telling you my parents were extremely poor. My mother was 25 years younger than my father. My father didn't marry till he was 47 years old, and then he had 10 children. And I was the 10th child, the last child. I was born when my father was 67 years old. And I love to tell this because I think it is so darned encouraging. Can always tell how old the men in the audience are. Those around that age kind of perk up, They could get lucky tonight. But anyway, we were extremely poor, but I could always sing, and I don't ever remember not singing. And my mother said by the time I was 2, she had taught me 50 songs. But it was just a part of me.
Was she an aspiring singer herself?
She loved music so much. She could play the piano by ear, the guitar. But, we were so poor, and she came from a poor family, so there was never any opportunity to study. But I was raised in a very small town called Rockport, and the Benedictine nuns and priests were my teachers, and they discovered I could sing. So by the time I was about 8, they put me in the big choir. So I learned 4-part Latin masses. I sang Gregorian chant. I did all the Holy Week services. I couldn't see over the choir loft. But it was all in Latin, and I did that till I graduated high school and went to New York. And so it was the best training in the world.
I read that you were performing in people's homes, wealthy people's homes, to try to make some money for your family.
Yeah, I would go to the grocery store when we really were broke, and I would tell them what we needed, what my mother told me we needed. And they would say, well, if you'll sing for us, we'll give it to you. So I would sing. And then I started singing for everything, like the Democrats, the Republicans. I did Al Jolson imitations. I just, that's what it was. I sang with a country band in high school, Clayton Spurlock. So it was just there. The music was always there.
Did you have anybody who was that you were listening to on the radio or recordings that was an influence on you, or you just had your own sound?
Well, I had my own sound, which I guess was a lot of country, but I loved good music, and the nuns would have me sing more classical things, and I had this real wide range. So I would be singing just all kinds of things. And then I worked in people's homes. I took care of children. I cleaned houses. I cooked. Because my oldest sister had her first child when I was like 5, I was taking care of...
You were an aunt at 5.
Yeah, I was taking care of children all my life and lugging them around. I stayed with families. I worked my way through school doing that. And however, when I was 14, I was kind of tired of doing that and ironing and cleaning people's floors. And to this day, I don't like it very much. But I went for a job at Kent's Bright Spot, which was the local, hangout. You sold bus tickets.
Right.
That's where the bus stopped. It was just
drugstore, ice cream.
Kent's Bright Spot. Oh my God. Well, I got a job at 14. I was a soda jerk, and I sold bus tickets and cleaned the floor and crushed ice, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. But they had a jukebox in there, and I think that was the first time I ever heard a musical comedy song, and fell in love with it.
Would you think that might have been the inspirational moments where you began to imagine becoming a professional singer or performer or actress?
No, I think, people talk about the Brady Bunch and how unrealistic it is, and, it's frou-frou and all that. But as I travel around, especially in minority groups, this show is so important to them. And what I realize, it's what movies were to me as a child, because I was in such poverty and no hope in sight, really, of getting out of my situation. But I'd go see these movie musicals, and I thought, yes, there's a better life. I'd see nice furniture or people that were loving to each other, and I thought, I've got to find a way to do that. And from the time I was very small, I loved to entertain people. I always wanted to make people happy if I could, and make them smile. And I find that's still the thrust of my work. I love to communicate with people, you can just see when people are suffering or need a lift. Right. And that's my vocation. That's what it's about.
Kind of jumping ahead, but did your mom and or dad get to see how successful you became?
My mother did, but my father, bless his heart, my father was an alcoholic. And he didn't drink every day, but when you think that the poor man was a tobacco farmer, we were tenant farmers, and so really owned nothing, but he was such a good soul. And he had a problem. So when I was about 12, I guess my mother left. She just, I guess, had it with 10 kids and poverty, and had all of us, on this little farm with no electricity and no running water. So you can imagine how tough that must have been for her. But when she left, my sister and I, we were the only two left at home, were left to get my father off of a toot if he went on one. So I could do that when I was very, very small, and that was very painful and very sad to me. So when I was going to New York, when I found out that, these people would support me there at the American Academy, the last thing I did was get my father off a binge, and I shaved him, and I shook my finger in his face and said, "You can't do this. I won't be here to take care of you. Daddy, you've got to," "Oh, okay, gal, I promise." And that's really the last time I saw him. He died not too long after that. But, those are the experiences, if you cannot be bitter or angry about them, are really the strengths. So that's where you gain your strength and your hope and your desire to go on and have a better life. And
so your mom, she came back into your life and got to see you?
Well, I always wrote to my mother, and I saw her periodically, and then, shortly after I went to New York, I became successful.
Right.
And she came to see the show, and she was a real country woman, very forthright and forceful, and said exactly what she thought. And so she did get to see me often. When I was doing South Pacific, just to give you an idea about my mother, at Lincoln Center in New York City, I brought her to New York, and I said, "Okay, Mom, do not sing along. This is a musical comedy. Remember, you saw Oklahoma. No, please. Oh, what are you talking about? I wouldn't do that." So it was the first time that they had built the stage down to the first row of the theater, and the orchestra was behind us, behind a scrim.
Right.
So we never saw them. And it was all about trust, trust your conductor and so forth. But my mother was in about the 5th row center, and I'm singing, "I'm in love, I'm in love," I hear, "I'm in love." Oh, jeez. And I'm praying that, I guess she would have been probably the worst stage mother that ever lived, had she known more about it.
Oh, that's a sweet story.
Oh, boy.
So here you are, you're basically this young woman off the farm, and you moved to New York, and you started to talk about that a moment ago, but what was that like? That must have been a frightening, exciting, challenging experience.
Well, I'd never flown. I was on a plane. When I saw the New York skyline, I thought, oh my God. Everybody says that, don't they? Oh my God. Well, it truly was so overwhelming. And yet, coming from this little farm town with no building over 2 stories high, in a sense, I felt like I was coming home. And it's strange, when you're 17 to feel that way. But I've always felt that way. And it took me about a month, I guess, to have the courage to look up because it was so overwhelming. But I love New York. I always did. I stayed one night at the Barbizon Hotel for women, which was all I could afford. And the next day they found me a place up on West 85th Street between West End and Riverside. It was called the Three Arts Club, and it was for women who were, you know, in the arts and advertising and all. And it was the greatest experience of my life. And I had a room about the size of my closet now, but I never had a room to myself or a bed to myself. So everybody was complaining about the size of this room. I thought it was just paradise, you know? It was just great.
So you started to train at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts?
Yes.
And you were doing the program full time?
Yes. The school was in Carnegie Hall at the time.
Ooh.
And oh my gosh, it was just the most exciting.
Terrific.
We'd sneak in and watch the Philharmonic and all kinds of things. It was just a great time.
There's such a romanticized view that I have of, you know, imagining someone coming. I grew up in New York, so it's not the same, but coming to New York and being in Carnegie Hall and musicians and, you know, tuning up and singers vocalizing and trying to get started and being with your girlfriends. It must have been really exciting for you, I suppose.
Oh, it was amazing. One of the other classmates was Elizabeth Montgomery. And we were the two, I think, out of the class. There are a lot now who are professors and teachers, and some were a lot older, you know, that had come to just further their education. But it was a great time and a great experience for me. Oh my gosh.
Would you share with us how you got your first break in terms of Wish You Were Here?
Yes.
Sure. And how that came about, and it kind of leads us also into how it led you into other things and after that.
Well, it was an open call. I hardly knew what that was, but a lot of the kids in the class were coming back and saying they'd gone to this audition for a show, a musical, and that you didn't have to belong to the union. Well, you know, that old vicious circle. You can't do it if you don't belong to the union. You can't belong to the union if you don't have a job, and da-da-da-da-da. But this, you didn't have to belong to anything. You just had to show up with some talent, hopefully. So I went to the Alvin Theater, and there were so many young people there, all just hundreds. And finally, it came my turn. And one of the girls had thrown me a bathing suit and a piece of sheet music. And so I come out on stage, and I think I sang Only Make Believe. And I had long blonde hair, and I must have looked like I was right off the farm. And this show, Wish You Were Here, was really about a Jewish camp in the Catskills. But I didn't, you know, ignorance is such bliss. I was out there singing my heart out. And Josh Logan, the great director, was out there, and Harold Rome, the composer, and they said, "Did you bring a bathing suit?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I did." So I go down to the basement to put on this bathing suit. It did not fit me. It struck me about here, and it was a little wider, and so this old stagehand named Charlie Bauer heard me kind of struggling, and so he went and got some safety pins and calmed me down, and I kept in touch with him for years because
I can imagine.
He was so sweet. And I come back up on stage, and I'm, you know, kind of doing this and this and this, and being a little embarrassed anyway to be in a bathing suit. And so Josh Logan said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Well, not really. This isn't my bathing suit. Someone loaned it to me." And he said, "Well, we'd like you to come back for a second audition in about a week. So maybe you'll have a bathing suit that fits." So I came back for my second audition, and of course I had a bathing suit that fit. So I always tell kids, you know, sometimes the thing that seems the most negative turns into a positive, because that's what they remembered. They remembered the bathing suit that didn't fit and the fact that I could sing. So I got a part in Wish You Were Here. I was the new girl at camp. And oh my God, I had wound up with one line, and I would come across the stage with my little suitcase, and my line was, "Can I still see the game?" Oh, I will never forget it. And while I was changing for that little part, Jack Cassidy was up on stage singing Wish You Were Here. And I was just so thrilled to be in a show and be alive, and I was singing too. So the orchestra pits in New York, you know, they're they go in this way and it goes out into the audience. So Bobby Griffith, who became one of the great producers on Broadway, was our stage manager. And he comes down the stairs yelling and said, "Who in the hell is that down here singing? Jack Cassidy sounds like a soprano on stage. Shut up." It was me.
Now you know where you got it from your mom.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, being the youngest of 10, you have a very loud voice.
Oh, you were the youngest?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, the need to be heard.
Right.
It stood me in very good stead.
So here you are, you're performing on Broadway.
Yes.
Must have been, I'm using this exciting again, but really thrilling for you to have, in such a short amount of time, reached this moment, and then you get introduced to Richard Rodgers?
Well, the thing was that I gave myself 3 years. Why I chose that, I don't know. I was 17. I thought, if I haven't got something in 3 years, then I think I better think about something else. I was always interested in medicine, so I thought I would try somehow to get to school, to college. And so, my gosh, the first year, I went to the head of the school. I was invited. You had to be invited back for the second year, and I said, "I've got this opportunity to be in this show, but I think maybe I should come back for the second year of school." He looked at me, he said, "Are you crazy, child? That's why you're here, is to learn to get a job, that you're going to get the best experience that you could ever have." So that's what started it. And I've never been out of work. I've never looked for work. I learned early, I think, how much I loved this business and how hard it was and how difficult it was. And I even loved all those aspects of it. And then when I did television, my first thing was singing off camera on the Ed Sullivan Show. I went, "Wow, I gotta do this." And then I just learned how many different unions there were. And every time I would step into another union, I went, "Wow, I like this." So I diversified very, very young, because I was so eager to learn everything and do everything. So I belong to this day to all 5 unions, and I work in all of them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You were talking about your passion for what you do.
Yes.
Could you expand on that and share with these fellow actors what it is to have passion about being an actor?
Well, I always say, first of all, if you don't have it, choose something else. You have to want it so deeply, so badly, that no amount of rejection. I have a friend that says, "Oh, I love rejection. It gives me more opportunities." Auditions are the toughest thing in the world. No matter how big you are, you still have to do it. You got to go in and meet the people. I don't want to. If they don't know what I look like by now, if I really want it, I do go in. It's a humbling experience. But I try to look on it as a challenge, and sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But, nothing stops me, and it's really my desire to be the best at what I do. I still study. I study voice. I'm always trying to learn something new. I love to work with people that are more talented than I am, and I'm sure most of you are. I learn from every experience. And I think one of the reasons that I've been able to last as long as I have, which is a very long time, at a pretty high level, which was always my goal, was the fact that I was able to be flexible in the business. When one door shut, I found a way to go another way. When, I used to play Vegas. You were there, 20 weeks a year, big orchestras, and then I saw the handwriting on the wall. I said, "No, this has got to stop." Salaries were getting too big. The musicians union, they were always striking. It was tough, and little by little, the business got smaller and smaller. So I would go out and work with a piano, or I'd work with a trio. I still do. So I can sing with a symphony, I can work with a trio, I can go do Ally McBeal, I can do, it's just, you just have to want to do everything and try to be good at it. I want to be good, I want to be professional, and I've never lost that desire. And I think when I do, then I will know it's time to hang up my hat. But when you work with people like George Burns, that I was so privileged to do I was the last performer to work with him
Uh-huh.
on his 98th birthday. And God, he loved what he did so much. He came out at 98, did a soft shoe, never missed a joke, never missed a song lyric, was so positive, so up. People came backstage. He was just fabulous. And so I like to think I'm going to be the female George Burns.
I hope you do.
Yeah, I do too.
And deservedly so.
I love it, you know.
Without that passion, it's hard to overcome the obstacles that are inherent in the business. And also, it's so great to hear how you've been able to adapt and make the transitions in seeing where a door opens and an opportunity may in one place to afford an opportunity someplace else.
Yeah, it's very interesting how it all comes about. You know, I developed in my career terrible stage fright and fear of flying, and these are two things you don't want in our business. It was very insidious how it came about, and I just got to the point where I just almost didn't want to go out on stage. It was just so hard for me. I talked to Helen Hayes about this. She went through it. Mary Martin went through it. I think it's because all of a sudden you know so much. You learn so much. You know what an audience is feeling and thinking, and it's overwhelming. And I think for me, I had a lot of personal things going on, and that was a safe place to put it. But I just, it was miserable. So I tried everything. I went to a wonderful psychiatrist, and that was great, but I still had the problem. And so anyway, I discovered hypnosis, and that was what saved my life. And I was so helped by it so quickly that I became a hypnotherapist. So it just seems that I do it pro bono, and I work a lot with very ill terminal patients. So there's always a door opening. Through that, my husband, who was the most brilliant hypnotherapist in the world, who encouraged me to share my life, to speak. Well, now I have a whole nother career as a motivational speaker. And I just try to go where my intuition is taking me and see where it leads me, and then I try to become good at it. I'm sure I fail sometimes, but if you don't try and take the risk, you'll never know.
Right. Very
And
much.
people are very afraid of change. Change is so frightening. Even changing teachers, changing where you live, changing how you work, trying a different technique. All of these things are terrifying, you know? But change is everything. And it takes courage.
It does.
Yeah, good.
Have some water there, please. You're back in New York, just as we're kind of going through your career, and you started to do live television in New York and began to raise a family simultaneously.
Yep.
How were you able to balance family and a career during those seminal days working on television and so?
Well, I had my first child when I was 21. I was starring on Broadway in Fanny. And I went into rehearsals for that show in August 1954, 8 shows a week, no microphones. And I did not miss a performance till January 1956 when I got married. And I had a baby 10 months later. And it's tough, you know, sometimes we talk about it, make it sound easy. But having a career, being a full-time mother, for me it was before Women's Lib. There was no one to say, yeah, you go for it. That's your talent. You deserve it. So you suffer a lot of guilt. I prayed a lot. I took a lot of vitamin pills. I took a drink every now and then. But you know, you have to have the organizational skills of a general. And again, you have to want it so much that nothing is going to stop you. And it was tough. I mean, I remember my daughter, my first daughter was in, who's now an executive with the Television Academy, thank you. She was in, you know, kindergarten and first grade at Marymount in New York. And I would run from rehearsal, like I'd be doing the Bell Telephone Hour in Brooklyn and rush to school to get to a T and rushed here and rushed there. And one day, Reverend Mother took me aside and she said, Florence, you worry so much. She said, God gave you a talent and he gave you a child. You're doing a great job at both. Don't try to be everything to everyone. And she said, the Holy Spirit will guide you. Just relax. So she gave me this little Holy Spirit encased in a lucite thing. And I've never traveled without it. I've been all over the world with it. And but it's hard, and you suffer guilt, and you miss this, and you think, what's going to happen to my children? Well, what happened to my children are that there are 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls. They're the greatest adults that I know of. They possess great kindness, sympathy, compassion. They're smart. And I'm a grandmother of 5. And so I think the secret may be, I think if people, and that includes your children, really know you love them, if they really know that, because I know there were parents that were with their kids, all the time, and their kids are in terrible trouble. Not necessarily the parents' fault, but they're drug addicts or whatever. But I think my children knew how deeply I care for them, and I was tough too. I always knew where they were. If I was on the road, they were always amazed that I knew where they were. But I'm blessed.
And yes, it is a blessing being a parent myself. You were doing the Today Show also?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well,
who was the host at that time?
Dave Garroway.
Dave Garroway.
It was his last. I was the Today Girl, which was interesting because all of a sudden I'm interviewing all these famous people. I wasn't an interviewer, but I learned.
Right.
It was great. And then I got pregnant on that show. Not on that show, but Dave Garroway wasn't that exciting. So I stayed with that until actually practically going into labor. But that was a great experience too.
Do you recall someone you might have interviewed?
One of the most thrilling for me was Billy Burke.
You have to explain who Billy Burke is.
The Wizard of Oz. He was the Good Witch, for those of you that are too young. Well, everybody's seen the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, God, thank you. But she was so adorable and so forthcoming, and she was married to the great Florence Ziegfeld.
Was she? I didn't.
Oh, yeah. And I had heard that she was so in love with him, and he was this big producer, with all these beautiful women, that she would always get up early and put on a full makeup, and so he would never see her. So she talked about all that, and she was so charming. And afterwards, Dave Garroway said, that was a very nice interview, but you became too friendly with her.
Oh.
I said, I did, but I got so much information out of her. And it was an interesting comment. And
did you think it was valid? Was that a valid comment too?
Maybe for his style of interviewing.
Right.
But my style of interviewing is not like that. What I've learned, though, about interviewing, and my husband taught me this, was that there are certain people who don't like their space invaded. They don't want you going, oh, Michael, yeah, So being outgoing as I am, sometimes I would tend maybe to move in too much. So, for instance, Willie Nelson is a person that's very protective of his space. And when I interviewed him, because I understood this, I started back like this. I started out here. But I had so much information on him. And I asked him questions that he couldn't answer yes or no.
Sure.
That's in interviewing. That's the key. And little by little, he starts leaning toward me, and he's leaning toward me, and he's saying anything I wanted to sing. And then you get someone like Garth Brooks you're interviewing. And
now, this is later on. This is...
I was doing a show in Nashville
right.
for 9 years called Country Kitchen. And Garth Brooks, you just say hello and let him go. So you begin to understand the different personalities.
Sure.
You know, and it's fascinating.
But I interviewed Jonathan Winters here, which is, you don't really get to interview that much, but he went on for and it was just brilliantly funny, and he's going on talking about being interviewed and doing it on his own. And I was only able to get in, just like tonight. He gave me this great look.
He's wonderful, Jonathan Winters. Talk about inventive and creative, and he's suffered a lot in his life.
Yes, he did.
He's had a lot of pain in his life, but on the old Hollywood Squares, I used to sit next to him a lot. And he does total stream of consciousness all the time. They go to a commercial break he's doing, and there it was in the Civil War, and the arrow got me. And he just has a whole dialogue going the entire time, and he's truly brilliant.
He really is.
You know?
Tom Bosley, who was here, I interviewed recently, he talked that when he was doing Happy Days and Jonathan was doing Mork and Mindy, during lunch at Paramount, when everyone was eating, everyone would disappear into the cafeteria as he and Robin Williams, Jonathan Robin, would go on. And
I was at Paramount during those years, doing the Brady Bunch on stage 5, and it was a pretty exciting time. We had a lot of wild people there.
I bet you. So let's discuss. So you're doing the Today Show. You're raising a family, and
then I started doing the Tonight Show.
And I was about to
Jack Parr.
It was Jack Parr's show at that time, and you were the first female host of the Tonight Show.
Yes, when Johnny Carson took over. Up to that point, there had not been a female host. Yes.
And how did they come to you for it?
Well, I had been a guest so many times on the show, and I'm pretty funny, and I know how to set people up so they can get a laugh as well, which is another trick.
Yes.
And it's about being generous. It's about sharing, and so Johnny loved to work with me, and he was not going to be there that night, so they asked me to host, and I went on to host it many, many times.
What was Carson like, too?
One of those people you didn't invade his space.
Right.
Basically very shy, but he had a real passion for what he did. He loved what he did. And that's where he was most comfortable, was when he was doing his thing, But off camera, he was very shy and very nice. I loved him. He had a lot of demons, but I loved him. I loved Jack Parr, too.
Did you find that many or most creative people have demons, and that partially what makes them so creative, if they use it in a constructive way?
Well, I think we all have demons just by the fact of our childhoods, our backgrounds, our lives, whatever happens to us through our fault or not through our fault. We all have those, and we have to deal with it. But I remember something Josh Logan said. He was manic depressive before lithium, and he would go off and just go crazy. I mean, he'd wind up in jail, but he could quote Shakespeare cover to cover. I mean, just he suffered so much. But then when the lithium was discovered and he was put on that, and people would say, would you think it stopped your creativity by becoming normal and being able to deal with this? And he said, I like to think that I could have been so much more creative without this problem. So it's hard to say. I think it gives you a lot of empathy and compassion for people if you're not bitter. I feel that the worst thing in life is to hold on to anger and bitterness and blame, because it does nothing for you. It doesn't hurt the person you're holding all these feelings for. It only hurts you. So I just...
How did you, given how you were brought up and your circumstances, how did you learn how to foster that inside yourself?
I think I came in with some of it. I think I was born with some of it, even remembering at age 6, the first time I saw my father cry when he was drunk. It made me so sad, but I didn't judge him for it. I just wish I understood. So as a small child, my prayer was always for understanding. So I've never been an angry person or grudge holder. I just find it such a waste of energy and time. It's like so many people tell me that so many big stars they try to speak to or say hello to. I fly all the time, and the flight attendants go, "You're so nice, you're so friendly." I go, "Well, why wouldn't I be?" They said, "Well, we had so-and-so on the flight, and they just made us feel." And that always makes me feel bad, because it takes so little energy to go, "Hi, nice to meet you, yes, thank you," they pay you a compliment, than it does to go, "Don't talk to me." You know. Talk to my manager, don't talk to me. You know, we all get into this business, I think most of us originally, because of our need to communicate, to express, and to create. And somewhere along the line, something happens to people. I don't know what it is. They become insulated and isolated and godlike, and it's embarrassing, and it's sad to me.
Life is too short.
Well, it's not only that, it's not what we're about. It's not what our business is about. Not that I think you owe everything, every being, fiber of your being, but by the same token, it's just about human behavior. You know, being nice. Why would you not want to be? Unless you just are a born bitch, and that's the way it is.
So you're doing television, and you're still in New York, and how long were you staying and working in the theater in New York until you eventually came out for the meeting Sherwood Schwartz and the Brady Bunch?
Well, I was doing a lot of television. I was doing theater. I did the National Company of the Sound of Music. I did the last musical that Noel Coward wrote, which was the greatest privilege in the world. And oh God, to learn from somebody like that. This was a musical called The Girl Who Came to Supper, which was based on The Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe. And I was the Marilyn Monroe part. And he was just brilliant. I remember there's a revival now of 110 in the Shade. Well, when we were doing The Girl Who Came to Supper, we were at the Colonial Theater in Boston, and 110 in the Shade was there. And Robert Horton, who had a big hit TV series, was playing the male lead, and Inga Swenson, who was a wonderful talent, was playing the female lead. So Noel was going to the matinee, and we said, "Oh, come back and tell us if Robert Horton can really sing," or, you know, he was a TV actor. We didn't know anything about him other than that. So Noel comes back after the matinee, and we're all waiting. And we said, "Well, what did you think?" He said, "Well, Inga Swenson is quite wonderful." And we said, "Well, tell us about Robert Horton. Can he sing? What's it like?" He said, "Well, let me put it this way." He said he wears these very tight jeans, and he walks down to the footlights, and he thrusts his pelvis forward, and it looks like he has a Rockingham tea set in there. So the audience liked him.
What was Noel Coward? What was Noel Coward like? Was he, in a way, like his characters from his plays?
He was so nurturing and so kind and compassionate. And I remember having a conversation with him once because I was going through a hard time and being away from my babies and doing this show and being on the road. And we were talking about life and death, and he'd been in a fire and almost died in his apartment in New York. And I said, "Weren't you terrified? Are you afraid to die?" And he said, "No, not really." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I have so many friends there waiting for me. There's Gertie and Vivian Leigh and Gertrude Lawrence and Lunt and all these people." "Oh, no, darling, no. And, I adored him, but viciously funny.
Yes, well, you could see in his writing.
Oh, yes. Vicious, but funny.
Were you only doing musicals, or were you getting also an opportunity to perform in dramatic work?
I did some straight acting on television.
Right.
But I was a musical theater performer. That was what I loved. I truly enjoyed it. And then I got into nightclubs. and started doing those. And that was fascinating to me. That is very challenging because it's just you and the audience.
Were you doing nightclubs back during this period?
I started doing nightclubs in the 60s, and still do them.
And did you? How did you go about that in finding what type of a show that you wanted to put together? I mean, was it coming from music that you sang in the theater, or?
It was music that I loved, some music that I did in theater, and just striking out and trying to do it.
Right.
And then you find people that are good at it who help you, and but most of the time it's material that I choose, that I feel has something for me to say to an audience. And so, you know, that's kind of what I do. I love to tell funny stories. I do that. So, you know your act is getting better when you take your closing number and eventually that winds up your opening number.
Why is that?
Because that means you've had to improve everything all the way down the line.
Oh, I see.
So now you have another great closing number.
There you go.
But your opening is as exciting as your closing was. So it's all about that. It's always experimentation. And sometimes you pick a number that's you shouldn't have. But that's okay.
That's okay. That's right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Brady Bunch, which is a big part of your career also. Would you share with how it came about? And also, were you surprised about, in the beginning, about the success that it was creating for you and everyone that was participating in it?
Well, I had achieved quite a bit of success before the Brady Bunch, and I was out here doing the Dean Martin show. I was a regular on his show. He loved me, Lena Horne, and Kate Smith.
That's a great
That's
trio.
a triumvirate, isn't it? But I was out here doing his show, and I got a call from my agent saying, would you go down to Paramount Studios and meet these people about a series? And I said, I don't want to do a TV series. I live in New York. I'm a theater person. And he said, well, just go down and meet them. I said, well, you know, I have to be on a plane tonight to get to Houston to open in a nightclub. And he said, they'll get you out. So I went down to Paramount, and I met Doug Kramer and Sherwood Schwartz and John Rich and all these people. And they said, could you stick around and do a scene? And I said, sure, if you get me on a plane to Houston tonight. I have to open there tomorrow night.
Had you prepared anything, or they
No, they just gave me a scene to learn. And it wasn't Robert Reed, it was another actor who did not get the part. And I did this scene, and they made me up in the Star Trek makeup room with William Shatner was in there, and Leonard Nimoy, and William Shatner was not too friendly, because who was this person in there? And to this day, I tell him he was not very nice. But in any case...
He's coming in here soon. I'm going to remind him of it.
Remind him, yeah. But I remember the makeup man put these big eyelashes on me. They were like... So when I come to the set to do the scene, which was in the Star Trek set, I said, before I started, I said, I didn't do this makeup. I think it's totally wrong for the character, but I didn't want to offend the makeup man, so take this into consideration. And then I did the scene. And I left, I got on the plane. Next night, I'm getting ready to go on stage for the opening, and I get a call. Would you come right back to LA to do the pilot? I did the pilot, forgot about it. I was appearing at the...
Same cast that eventually ended up doing the show?
Yes, what happened, they had Kathleen Freeman and Joyce Bulifant as Alice and Carol. And then, I don't know whether the chemistry was wrong or what, but they chose me. Then they didn't think Kathleen Freeman was right. Then they hired Ann B. Davis. And it turned out to be a wonderful choice because our chemistry from the beginning was pure magic. And so I got someone to fill in for me in Houston and told the guy I'd come back for the same money if the show was a hit. And then I got the movie Song of Norway, and I wound up being in Norway when they started shooting the Brady Bunch series, which was picked up. So that was a nightmare because they went through with the movie. So I had to fly back after I finished the movie and catch up with 6 episodes of
Oh my
the
goodness.
Brady Bunch.
They did 6 episodes without you.
Yeah, they shot around me, and then they picked up the scenes when I got back.
And that must have caused havoc amongst the other actors of having to go back 6 episodes. And
I guess, but they were all so sweet, and you know, it worked out. But I came back because I wore all these period hair pieces, and my own hair they had cut very, very short. By the way, I had long hair yesterday. I went for a trim, and he cut it all off.
Really?
So there you have it. But I'm not
It looks
attached.
great.
Not attached to hair. Someone said to me that.
Neither
well,
am I.
Yeah, obviously. The difference between
Okay.
the difference between a good hair day and a bad hair day is 3 weeks
There you
because
go.
it'll grow.
There you go.
But anyway, I had this real short, bleached blonde hair, so I had to wear a wig for like several months. And I call that my bubble do. But my hairdos on that show or something in the clothes, we don't even go there. What were we thinking? You know?
It's a strange period of clothing.
Oh,
Yeah. It was
plaids and stripes
right.
and
And the hair and the mustache.
David Arquette is still wearing it. Just pretty amazing to me.
I mean, the show became so popular, and I don't know if I have really a specific question for you about it, but what was it experience being on the show and being part of a family and being a mom on the show, and also people seeing you as a mom and raising your own family all simultaneously?
Well, by that time I had 4 children. My youngest was under 2, I think. But I was the only one on the show that was a hands-on parent. So they came to me a lot for behavior, and I didn't get to whack those kids on the behind like I did my own, but you know, my kids would go, "Why didn't you ever yell at them?"
Sure.
And that was kind of a hard period for me because of my own children being small and being this mother, you know, holy figure on television. That was kind of hard for me, but you know, my kids always knew I took my work seriously, but I never took myself very seriously. But that little show is amazing to me because we ran 5 years. We were a film show. So we would do so many setups in a day. It was hard work. Because we worked with children, they could only work so many hours. So we'd go to work in the dark, come home in the dark. If they had to leave, they'd write a scene for Amby Davis and myself. So because we were filmed, it was always, you know, shoot a master shot, come in for close-ups, and there were 9 of us. So you can imagine.
Lots of coverage.
But the show has never been off the air in this country, ever. And it's still in like 122 countries around the world. And I don't know. It's
Did you ever feel at that time I'm sure you were extremely grateful.
Typecast?
Yes. In wanting to allow that other darker side or another part of you to be there in your work?
Well, yeah, I think we all face that. You know, if we get lucky and we get a role that becomes, you know, a household fixture. People love it, and they loved having you in their home, and that's a privilege. But by the same token, we are actors, and, you know, I was acting as Carol Brady. I mean, I'm much funnier than she is. And, funnier and raunchier and you name it. But, you know, because I was always able to do so many other things, I never felt frustrated. So I decided very early to embrace it. To embrace it, because it's a part of the fabric of my career. There's nothing I can do about that except embrace it, be proud of it, be positive that I was lucky enough to have a job, and it's led me to many other things. And the fact that there's so much affection that comes to me. I mean, every day there's someone that says, "Can I just have a hug? Would you just hug me?" I go, "Sure," you know. So it's hard to explain, but I just decided to embrace, and I've tried to tell the Brady kids that, you know, like Eve Plum will go through her things of not wanting to be a part of it, and she will to be a part of it, and this one won't. And I go, if you don't cherish your past, you'll never get past it.
That's right.
You know, it's there. You can't pretend it wasn't, or it isn't.
You brought your family, once the show you knew was going to run, you moved everyone from New York?
No, we shot the bulk of it in the summer, but then I commuted.
Weekly?
Yeah, it was hard for a few months out of the year.
Right.
And then we moved here in '74, actually, the last couple of years of the show.
Right. And when you eventually then went into doing guest starring and recurring characters on other episodic television shows, what was that life like for you, having had this well-established television show and long arm of musical comedy work to be on the Love Boat, for example?
Well, yeah, I did the Love Boat. I think Charo and I hold the record. Yeah, I was
Just like who were you comparing with? Lena Horne and
yes, right, yes.
Another coupling for you.
Charo, you know, that's another. Talk about change. I did Hollywood Squares with her recently.
Right.
She has the exact same hairdo, wears the same clothes, has the same. It's interesting to me. You know, it's like, oh gosh, that's why I never mind cutting my hair off or doing anything. The only thing I regret, I have a bad nail here. I did Ally McBeal, and I played a wonderful role, a sex therapist,
Right.
and I got to sing on it, and the upshot of it was that I counseled this woman who did everything I told her, and her husband left her. So she's suing me.
Oh no!
So I wanted to have long red fingernails. I never have long fingernails, but I wanted to have long red fingernails, so I went and got those fake nails.
Sure.
And I had big hair and, you know, big jewelry and flashy clothes. But getting those suckers off, don't ever wear them if you don't have to. It's the worst, isn't it? Did you wear them? I only had them on for a few weeks. I still can't get my nails to grow. But for me, it's great fun. You know, I did a movie, which is now like a cult thing with Bobcat Goldthwait. Did you see it? Shakes the Clown. I had so much fun doing that. And people are like always so shocked. But that's me. I mean, you know, I do hickeys on my inside of my leg and my neck and matted my hair down. And, you know, I was this lady with a heart of gold. You know, it didn't matter. And then I did the Actors Fund benefit not too long ago. So they were honoring Eben Kander, and they said, oh, you'll sing one of their ballads. And I said, no, I don't want to sing a ballad. You know, I always sing ballads. They said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do When You're Good to Mama from Chicago. And I wore a dominatrix outfit, and I had a whip, and I had, it was brilliant. David Galligan did it, and a young...
You didn't bring any of that with you, did you? No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have it in my car.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
We could take a break and...
Yeah, you never know. Well, I had so much fun doing this, and Danny Mojica, who had danced in the chorus of a show that I did, was the choreographer. And we had 3 girl dancers, 3 boy dancers, and we made big, you know, placards, I guess you call them, of the Brady Bunch. 3 girls, the 3 girls and the 3 boys. And so I came out with a coat and very demure, and I sang the verse to When You're Good to Mama. You know, ask any of the chickies in my pen, so forth and so on. And then at the end of the verse, I ripped the coat off and had on the black leather and the fishnet hose and the boots. And one of them handed me a whip in a very suggestive way. And they turned the placards, and on this side was Ellen DeGeneres, Rosie O'Donnell, and Katie Lang. And the guys were Elton John, who was David Hayes. And I thought maybe we could take a risk and do somebody like John Travolta, but yeah, I'm kidding, John. But we didn't do that. We chose one other person, I can't think, one who's very out, you know.
Sure.
And well, the audience went crazy, and it was just the funniest number. So the girl that choreographed and created Florida Follies, which I did all winter, said, you got to do that number in the show. I said, with old people in Florida, you know? She said, yeah, well, it just stopped the show every night. And then after Janet Jackson's thing, at the end of the number, I go, eat your heart out, Janet Jackson. Well, that would be another big laugh, you know. You got to know where to do it.
Did anyone tape it, or?
Oh, I think it's taped.
It's on the internet someplace?
Archival.
There.
Yeah. They always say that. Oh, it's just archival, I'm sure, yeah. But I love doing things like that because it's a stretch, and I guess I will do anything for a laugh almost anything, which is scary. But I'd rather hear people laugh than, it's just, to me, it's so satisfying. And it's the surprise element. Nobody expects me to do that. And so having worked with some of the great comics over the years, you just learn.
You talked about Jonathan and George Burns.
Bob Hope.
Bob Hope.
Yeah, working with Bob Hope was interesting because if he wanted you to do a skit with him, he would teach you. We were in Australia together.
Right.
And you couldn't paraphrase. You did not add one word. I go, but can't I just? No, he said, you'll destroy the rhythm.
Gotcha.
You won't get the laugh. And it's interesting. We know it's all about rhythm and all of that. But, oh yeah, Bob Hope. Dean Martin was one of the funniest, most creative, with timing that was, you know, timing is everything, they say.
No. So you also then went off and did down in Nashville, you were doing a cooking conversational, and you were talking with Willie Nelson. Was this also, as you described earlier in our conversation, seeing that there was another venue for you to be able to reach out to?
Well, I do a program that my husband created at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, which is in Tarzana, called the Mental Bank. And it's a process, I won't go into the whole thing, but it takes about 5 minutes at night. And I do it all the time, but when I have a goal, I start writing for it. And any step I take towards that goal, I pay myself. And it's fascinating how it works, but I wrote I wanted a talk show. I didn't specify where, I should have. But a week later, I get a call from my agent saying, would you like to do a talk show? And I said, yeah. And he said, where? I said, Nashville. I said, okay. So I would fly down there, and we'd tape like 14 shows in 10 days. And it was a half-hour show, and we cooked, we sang, we talked. I wrote all my own interviews. I had no writers. I helped produce the show. Great experience. I loved it. And it went on for 9 years. And I got to do not do every country performer, but have them on the show.
A lot of sexual innuendo in this.
Oh, yeah, that's my middle name. You know.
I don't know if people knew that before.
Oh, they do.
Oh, yeah?
Those that know me well, no. Oh, yeah. I mean.
And you authored a book coming out of your cooking show.
Yeah, I did. It was a little cooking, a little talking, and a whole lot of fun. And it was really just about the show and recipes. And then I did a show on public broadcasting called Shortcut Cooking. And we did a book on that. And that was 26 episodes of Shortcut Cooking.
Now, are you a great cook?
Not really. But the thing is, what you learn is how to work with a teleprompter. I didn't have a teleprompter on Country Kitchen because I wrote the interviews and I knew what I wanted to say. But if you're just doing like a straight cooking show and you want it to be conversational and like even a show like Later Today, you know, in New York, you have to know how to work with a teleprompter, and people don't. And it's really a skill that every actor should have, because it's a way that you do it where, you know, when you see people's eyes doing that, you know they don't have a clue. And you begin to know that it's your friend, and you pick up words, and you're sort of familiar with it, and you turn back to the camera, and it's a fascinating, that's why I love doing commercials. You know, people poo-poo them, but I'll tell you, they're tough. Hey, you hold that you know, that Wesson oil bottle. It's got to have. I once did a sketch on one of the talk shows. I said, "You think it's easy?" I said, "Here, I want you to hold a plate of chicken. I want you to pick up a chicken leg, take a bite out of it, say these words in 4 seconds, put that down, pick up the Wesson bottle, and get all 6 letters in the frame, and smile."
There's a real craft to.
Well, that's what I'm
commercial,
saying.
yes.
It's such a skill required. You can't paraphrase. You must learn. This must be said in 4 seconds, and it must be said with sincerity and truth. And talk about having to find ways to motivate yourself.
Yes.
Take 40, and they print every one. And they'll go, "Well, just try one." And they usually go back to the first one you did. But I go, "Sure, yeah, let's do it."
So commercials and being a commercial spokesperson has been a big part and a well-known part of your career.
Yes.
How did you not?
How did I get into it?
Well, not how did you get into it as much as what has made it so successful for you. What were you able to bring? Do you think that I read that you were regarded as one of the top 5 spokespersons in America for products?
I think because of credibility. I always check out what I'm selling. I want to make sure it works. I want to make sure it does what it says. You know, when I was asked to do Polident, I met with the people in New York, and I said, "Well, these are my own teeth," you know, and I could never say that I used the product. So how can you get around that? Why would you want me to sell this product? And they said, "Because we know you can, and we want you to do it." And so I studied the product, and I looked at it, and they wrote the first one, and it was never indicated that I use it. And one of my friends said, "You know, why did you do that, Florence? You have such beautiful teeth." And I said, "Well, if you knew how much they were paying me, you would have pulled your teeth." So I try never to look down on anything in this business, because you never know where that leads you. And I remember years ago, I think it was Jane Fonda talking about actors shouldn't do commercials and all of this, and Henry Fonda, and next thing you know, he's doing GAF, that you know,
right.
camera, and she's doing her videos, you know, till the cows come home. So I try never to put anything down, because you never know when you might want to do that, and it's all a skill. It's all part of our business. We are in a business, and so I just, you know, I take pride in that, and I know how tough it is.
Yes.
So
when you look back.
And it allows me to buy so much music and gowns. And I'll spend a fortune on my work, and I spend very little on myself, you know, as Florence.
Sure. I was going to ask you, given where you started and where what you've achieved, this journey that you've taken, what are you most surprised about that you've been able to do so much and understanding what it is to be such a successful human being as well as an artist?
Well, I personally feel if you're not a successful human being, the rest doesn't matter. It's really not important, because we don't own our talent. It's a gift. It's given to us. What we do with it, we do own, and we can hone it and make it better and try to be good at what we do and be dedicated, and you know, you really have to be dedicated to it. But it's why I wanted to have children. I think the more you live life and the more you experience, the better you are as an artist. And that's just been my philosophy. And sometimes that's very tough, because it's been very important to me to stay grounded, to stay open and centered. I work so hard on that all the time, because it's important to me, because I've seen so many that I started out with, you know, who lost it, who, you know, who weren't happy, who weren't happy with their lives, weren't happy with their work, And I just decided early that I had to find a way to be joyful. And the times I haven't been, when I was going through my fears and all of that, were very painful times for me. So it's being here with all of you today. You know, this is a joyful experience for me. And I'm humbled that anybody's here and that you want me for this archive. But, I have a lot of experience. I'm willing always to share it. And I think one of my teachers at the American Academy, he was so wonderful. And he said, I'm going to tell you something that is the most important thing to remember in this business. And I always tell kids this, I get so many letters from kids. And I say, what Mr. Goodman taught me was keep a cool head and a warm heart. And that's what I've tried to do. And be smart, Work your butt off. That's all you can do. It's hard. It's such hard work. Oh my goodness.
You're a terrific person. It's a real, you're talking about joy. It's a real joy to sit here and listen to you talk about your career and your life so openly and with such a Midwestern positive. My wife's from the Midwest, so just that positive, we can choose to deal with things the way we want to if we take on that responsibility.
Right, but if you're not going to share honestly, don't do it.
Right.
I'm very willing to share whatever information I have. I do a show now on Lifetime called Speaking of Women's Health. And, I lost my husband 2 years ago, and we were never, ever apart. It was such a great, great gift to me. And so I was really having a difficult time. And last year, we did a piece on grieving. And because I know how people suffer when you lose a part of yourself. And I go to a wonderful therapist that my husband trained, who specializes in hypnosis. And we got so much mail because, why do I want to go on and pretend that I don't suffer like everyone else and I don't struggle like everyone else? So we do the show. It's on Lifetime every Saturday morning, and we deal a lot with health issues. My friends call me the shingle because I'm a frustrated doctor, but we share a lot of information.
Right.
And so that's what I'm about,
Well, it's just wonderful to have you participate and to leave yourself open to bringing that to us for today. Part of what we're going to do is take a few questions, if you have a moment or two.
Sure.
This woman right here, right in front of you, Bob.
It's great to be able to listen to you today, and I just wanted to comment on one of your comments earlier when you were saying that especially minority people that you speak to found the Brady Bunch important.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people. It was off the air when I started watching it. I didn't know that those were reruns. But coming from two families that became one who was not stable and being able to tune into the Brady Bunch that was stable, that gave me hope.
Right.
And I never thought of it and still don't think of it as unrealistic. I appreciate it, and thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Isn't that nice?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Mike Silver. You really come off as a beautiful.
Talk into the mic, Mike.
Very beautiful inside. With your personality, the way you're talking about yourself, I'd like to ask you what types of sort of pranks or funny things you did on maybe some of the sets or plays.
I'm sorry.
Pranks or
Funny things you did.
funny things while to keep yourself going, perhaps when you were on a show, whether there were.
Yeah, I did a couple. Usually, I become great friends with the crew. The crew is always, they are the most important people, and they are your family, and they are your support. And it's the people that, your hair, your makeup, wardrobe, all these people are so vitally important. We're just the end product, but there's so much that goes into us, and much love and support. But I remember, for instance, on the Brady Bunch when Joe Namath was on, And everybody's, oh, Joe Namath. And I actually got the football through this ring. He didn't. Wow. That comes from having 5 brothers.
There you go.
But in any case, I worked out with the director. I said, when he says goodbye to all the family, we're in the driveway, you know, we're on that fake grass that we had, the AstroTurf. And he says goodbye to Mike and Ann B. and all the kids. And when he got to me, I jumped up threw my arms around him and my legs around his waist. And I said, take me away from all this. I hate this family. Get me out of here. And his face got all red.
That's so
and he carried me off. So,
yeah, that's wonderful.
yeah, every once in a while we do crazy things.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite, I don't know, people ask you this, do you have a favorite episode or two or a storyline that really meant something extra special for you?
Well, I always loved it when we got out of the studio. For me, I mean, that was such a joy to film in Nichols Canyon, or we went to the Grand Canyon, and they wanted us to get on those mules. Have you ever seen those mules at the Grand Canyon? They're the biggest things I've ever seen. I had to have a step ladder to get on my mule, and I was last. There was the mule skinner, Robert Reed, Amby Davis, the 6 kids, and me. And this mule, and we're going down the canyon, and mine kept leaning over and eating. And I'm looking down. So I'd go, Al, the mule skinner, Al, what do I do? What do I do? And the camera's, you know, rolling. He said, just pull on the reins, pull her up. And we got off those mules. My saddle wasn't dry, I'll tell you that. I was scared. And then we went to Hawaii. We did 3 episodes. And we were on this outrigger. And we were on a wave that was so high. And the camera boat's over here. I knew Susan Olsen couldn't swim because she'd been at my house. We're all 9 of us are in this outrigger, plus the rudder man driving. All of a sudden, I see the camera boat lose control, coming right at us. I grabbed a hold of Susan. Next thing I know, we're upside down in the water. And we're in pretty deep water. There were no life jackets. I mean, now the union would have their heads. I'm not a strong swimmer, but I held on to her for dear life. The boat was upside down. Barry Williams is a strong swimmer, and anyway, they managed to get us back into the boat.
Oh my goodness.
And we did it again. And little Susan Olsen was chattering. She was so scared. And we did it. We got it the second time, but when we got in, I tell you, and they knew that we had been swamped, you know, on shore. And that made the wire services. That was scary, you know, to think we had no life jackets, nothing.
Oh, no. We have a question. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Hi, Ms. Henderson. Barry Ratcliffe. Nice to meet you. 2 questions, really. Number 1, how do you get better looking the past 30 years?
You're sweet.
Number 2 is, what type of acting do you do, and what type of method acting do you do, or do you just call upon your experiences?
Well, thank you for your compliment. A lot of it is trying to just, I think, be in harmony and being interested. You know, again, loving what I do and watching what I eat and working out and all those things because our business is all about stamina. And if you don't have it, you're dead in the water. Your other question, well, I learned at the academy, you know, to work on use your own experiences. And I guess I do that, you know, a lot, try to draw upon my experience, but sometimes you're playing a character where you don't have that experience. You know, I've never been a hooker, so if I'm going to play that, it was like when I did the role in Shakes the Clown. You know, it was so much fun for me. So you come from a different place.
Use your imagination.
Absolutely.
Actors don't have to murder someone to play a murderer.
No, it's like the great story with Dustin Hoffman and Sir
Olivier.
Laurence Olivier, and Dustin went and had his teeth ground down from Marathon Man, you know, when he was, that scene, a brilliant scene. And he came in one day when he had the running scene, and he's like this. He said, I'm so tired, I was running all night. So Sir Laurence Olivier said, "Dear boy, why didn't you try acting?" You know. So a lot of it is acting and reacting. You know, you get it from your fellow actor.
When you were talking earlier about stage fright, Olivier suffered from stage fright.
You'd be shocked at the people that go
Right.
through that. It's just, and it's terrifying.
Mm.
But, you know, you find a way to get over it.
He talked in his autobiography that he would not allow another actor to look at him on stage, otherwise he wouldn't be able to. And this is after he's been Hamlet and Richard III.
Oh.
And,
Yeah, because you know how easy it is to fail
yeah.
and how much there is to lose.
Mm.
When you're young, you don't know. So,
Yes.
I remember a show that I saw you in, I believe with Robert Reed, probably about 20 years ago, I think at the Long Beach Civic Light Opera. It was a play about empty nesters that in the course
Oh,
of
yes.
one evening, all the kids come back.
yes.
Can you elaborate on that experience? I mean, I love the show. My family saw it together. We, you know, did theater together. But
Yeah,
just-
the name of the play was Alone Together. And it was great fun. Robert Reed played my husband. And I was a very unfulfilled wife. And the
Oh,
kids
yes,
kept
I
coming
remember
back.
this. Uh-huh.
You couldn't get rid of them, which is true in our society today. You can't get rid of them. You know, they keep coming back. It was a wonderful play, a lot of fun, a real comedy with some, you know, heavy scenes. And I love doing it. One night when I'm having this tirade, you know, against Robert Reed and the boys, the three sons, and I am supposed to go out the kitchen door and slam the door, and I've got all this momentum going, and I could not. The door wouldn't open.
Oh, goodness.
And the doorknob just kept going around like this, and the audience started to laugh, and I could not get the door open. I kicked the door, and I turned around. Robert Reed is laughing so hard, and the boys are laughing. So I climbed out the window.
That's great.
You know, I was so furious.
Now, you work with Robert Reed on many occasions for long periods of time.
Yes.
We'll talk about that relationship.
Well, Robert and I were very, very close friends, and when he became ill and called me, how I knew he was very ill was he asked me to fill in a speaking engagement for him, oddly enough for a cancer hospital in Little Rock, Arkansas. And of course he wanted to keep it very quiet because he was teaching then at UCLA, teaching a course in Shakespeare. And so he was a very proud man, a wonderful actor, and a wonderful human being, and who happened to be gay. And none of us ever cared. It was not an issue. It was just not, it wasn't important. And so when he was so ill, he said, "But I think I'll make it." And then when he wasn't going to make it, he called me one day and said, he said, "Florence, I thought I was going to make it, but I'm not. Would you tell the kids?" He loved us. We were his family. And they all were just so devastated by it. But then the awful thing was, like after he died, the Inquirer, I believe it was, or doesn't matter, they're all the same, printed his death certificate on the front page, which said he died of AIDS. And I thought that was one of the cruelest things I've ever experienced in my life. And so I did, oh my gosh, 100 interviews because everybody was calling to talk about it. And you know, I just wanted to preserve his dignity, and he lived his life very discreetly and really suffered a lot because, you know, in the 70s you couldn't come out. And here he was playing the father of America. And he has a daughter, Robert does, which he did not raise, but in any case, it was so unfair and so awful. And I think that hurt us all more than just about anything.
Yes, sir.
Hi, pleasure to be here with you, so part of my childhood. When you were coming up in the 50s in New York, so many of the legends of this industry were really at their peaks. Did anybody influence you at that time in your life?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was very influenced by Josh Logan, by the great opera singer Ezio Pinza, by Mary Martin, who was my hero. After I saw her in Peter Pan, I went, oh, Lord. When she flew through that window and sang, and, you know, no microphone. We didn't have microphones then. You just had to be able to fill a theater 8 times a week. She was not only my hero, but she became a dear, dear friend. And the odd thing, the day Mary died, I was on my way to see her in Palm Springs, my husband and I got a call saying that Mary had just passed away, and Larry Hagman was on his way down and so forth. And so we turned around. It was very early in the morning, and we went into the hotel in the marina, and we were going to have breakfast. And we walk in, and on the music, they were playing Speak Low, which was one of Mary's great songs in her early career. And I went, okay, Mary. Yeah, I mean, that was quite wonderful.
She was just extraordinary talent.
Oh, the best.
Really.
The best, and sweet and funny, and
Real showbiz person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, hi. You've done some cable access, you said. And have you taken any classes to use material for improving, you know, self-improvement or motivation, and even vocal lessons? What kind of classes you've been taking to use material, like hypnosis, maybe? Anything?
Hypnosis has helped me tremendously. And then, as I mentioned, the mental bank, which, you know, can motivate you. But mostly I learn if I go into a new experience, I ask a lot of questions and I observe, and I'm not ashamed to say I don't know that. Can you explain that to me? And then, you know, if you're a fairly quick study, and I find that most people are so willing to help you. You know, they want to help you, make you look good, and make you be the best you can be. I certainly do that if I'm working with someone who maybe doesn't have the experience. Oh, it gives me such joy to be able to make them shine. You know, that's really how it works, I think. And yes, I have a wonderful voice teacher in New York. It was a totally different technique than I was used to. And
You're still taking class now?
a
Voice class?
lesson, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And so I'm always trying to learn something new and how to last. You know, if you're the last one standing, you get the job.
That's right. How about 1 or 2 more?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dawn Meyer. This is my twin sister, Diana Meyer.
Are you twins?
Yes.
I kept seeing you there. I'm going, whoa.
Gosh, it is so great to listen to you today.
Thank you.
I feel your energy, and it's wonderful. Actually, at the end, if I can touch you, it'd be great.
I'll give you the biggest hug.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm game for that. That hypnosis institute that you talked about, I believe I've been there. My twin sister referred me to go to there, and I had like 5 sessions, and it was incredible. I worked on some big issues,
Right.
and with a little bit of time, I think some things have worked out well for me.
Good.
And I recently went to Sedona, Arizona. Actually, I don't know if you've heard about the energy vortexes over there, which is
Oh, yes, I
and-
was just there in Sedona.
No way. When?
Yeah, I got these earrings there. Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do the vortex tour and everything? And
Do you want to tell us what that is?
Well, you tell it.
well, there's these energy grids there, and I guess they're everywhere around the world, but there's a high concentration of them there. And check this out, in the mountains there,
Check
they
this.
have these crystals that magnify the energy. And I'll tell you what, you go over there, you feel some good energy, and I'm still feeling it too. So, you know, I mean, it's I don't know if, I hope this never goes away from me.
He wants to hug you.
He's passing out compliments to all the women
We'll
today.
have a group hug.
You know what I did
Well,
too?
you know what? You just said the most important word here today. Energy. And I truly believe that there is spiritual energy, there's grace, there are all of these things out there for people. And I know that may sound a little new age, but I've been believing this since I was a kid. And working with great choreographers like Carol Haney was all about energy. Get your feet in, plant them in that floor. If you're going to dance, dance. If you're going to exit the stage, exit. If you're going to come on, come on. It's all about energy. And energy is really up here. It's all in the mind, I think.
Well, I had a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, we're tall women. We're like 6'2". You'll see when we meet you and all.
Well, you don't scare me.
Awesome. Okay,
Okay.
because we have a little intimidation problem sometimes because we're not so bad looking, but we scare them, because we're 6'2" and we're
Yeah.
really, gentle giants, that kind of thing. But now you being a woman and everything, I see that most
I'm
of these
still a woman.
Yeah, most of these people that come here, they're men, okay? You're one of the few women I've heard talk, and we need, this is really good for us because, how have you dealt with, you've broken through it, and you've had to deal with men are mostly out there in the acting world and in performing, and, and how have you dealt with those kinds of issues? That was really my question.
Well, there's no doubt there's a double standard. My friend Carol Burnett, who's married to a younger man, for instance. Well, that's what she said. But I just want to talk about the double standard here. And she was questioned by Barbara Walters, who was trying to find out about the younger husband. And Carol said, well, why is it all right for Clint Eastwood to be married to somebody over 30 years younger? And she started naming all these men. That just burns me up, that double standard. I mean, I didn't date Greg Brady, but if I'd wanted to date Greg Brady, what difference does it make? I mean, what difference does it make? People sit in judgment all the time. So how I've dealt with it, I assume that, which is wrong sometimes, but I assume that everyone is out for my best interest. And I know sometimes they aren't, but that's not my problem. That's their problem. So I always come in, hey, this is the best I've got. This is me. I'm 5'4". Sometimes they're looking for 6'2". You just never know. But you just can't be intimidated. And I know that feeling. It's the worst. But I just go in thinking, well, they'll think I'm great. I may not be right for it. But if you just think that everybody really has your best interest at heart, because I think basically, having talked to so many people on both sides of the fence, I think they honestly do. And I think a lot of them fly by the seat of their pants, too. They don't know what in the heck they're doing,
Right.
a lot of them.
Very much so.
Don't you agree?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're there to try to solve their problem, and they have a problem in getting cast. And
But so often they don't even know what their problem is.
That's right.
You
Right.
know? And that is an issue we all face. But I think, every problem has a solution, and there'll be that one thing that you are right for.
That's right. That's very, very true. Yes. Good. Thank you for your question.
Keep the energy moving. Energy begets energy.
Do we have a
Work
I'm
at
sorry.
something, related to the business.
Do we have another question? Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Thank you, Bob.
What kind of balance between an intellectual process and an instinctive, you used the word instinct earlier, do you do when trying to sort through all your possible options and choices and presenting your best self that you were just talking about?
You mean as an actor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because of the speed of television, especially television, when you don't have the luxury of working with the fellow actors for 4 weeks and then going out of town with a show and, trying things out, what I've learned is that you better be discerning pretty quickly and try to make intelligent choices. But it's about being able to make a choice to select something. I mean, the director can always say, hey, wrong. you bring something, and because television is such a fast medium, you don't get a lot of time to experiment. Unless you're, a running character and you're on a show, and you begin to know your character so well, and the actors around you, give you so much. But you got to be pretty quick in your selections, I think, as an actor in television.
Yes, yes. Yes, ma'am.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we're trying to do some work with the young performers through the foundation. And would you be willing, if we could arrange something, to come in with some of the kids from the Brady Bunch and talk about what it means to be a young performer and how to sustain yourself in the entertainment environment of television? If we could put something together. The parents of young performers and young performers have very little place to go to find out what the industry is like, and they appreciate any kind of input that they get from people who've been there.
Did you see Dickie Roberts?
Oh, Dickie Roberts. Uh-huh.
The movie with David Spade?
That's not where we're going.
Sure, I'd be willing to. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I know it's a very hard life for a child. Very hard life.
And the parents need a lot of guidance.
They do. I think our kids were blessed because they had really, really good parents and who were really willing to stay away from the camera. That's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah. It has been a great pleasure and honor for me to sit here and share the stage with you and to learn more than your television persona is to find out more about you as a person. You're really a really remarkable survivor and a wonderfully talented and giving human being. And so on behalf...
Thank you, Michael. You were great, too.
Oh, thank you. That's a real compliment.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Screen Actors Guild Foundation, thank you for participating today. It was really terrific.
It's my pleasure. I've been paying dues for a long time.